7910 to amend Title 18 United States Code to provide for
Folks, here we go. We're live right now with live coverage on HR 7910. Here we go. Watch it.
In the days since the shooting at Tops Friendly Market Store in Buffalo, New York, in the long sad nights since the shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, and in just the last few hours, as we learned of yet more deadly gun violence in the Tulsa in the Talmud. Whoever takes one life, it's as if he kills the entire world. And whoever saves one life, it's as if he saves the entire world. Every life is precious. Let that be the measure of our
If you guys can hear Chairman Nadler, okay, please give me some comments in the comment section. I'm being told you guys cannot hear anything. If you can hear Chairman Nadler, let me know.
HR 7910, the Protecting Our Kids Act, links together important, sensible, overwhelmingly popular proposals that will help us to scale back the scope of gun violence in the United States. Representative Anthony Brown's Raise the Age Act would raise the lawful age to purchase an AR-15 semi-automatic assault rifle from 18 to 21 years old. In deeply red Wyoming, the state with the most guns per capita in the union, this is already the law with respect to many firearms. And I note with great sadness that the suspected shooters in both Buffalo and Uvalde were only 18 years of age. Representative Robin Kelly's Prevent Gun Trafficking Act would establish new federal offenses for gun trafficking and straw purchasing, problems she is as familiar with in Chicago as we are in New York, where the vast majority of firearms used in criminal activity are transported into the city from out of state.
The iron pipeline.
Representative David Cicilline's Untraceable Firearms Act would ensure that ghost guns are subject to existing federal firearms regulations. A deadly weapon is a deadly weapon, even if you build it from a kit in your garage. A trio of gun storage proposals, Representative Rosa DeLauro's Ethan's Law, Representative Alyssa Slackman's Safe Guns, Safe Kids Act, and Representative Sheila Jackson Lee's Kimberly Vaughn.
It's the whole kitchen sink of gun control, folks, all at one time.
For safe firearm storage, and the word grants for firearm storage assistance.
Yeah, lock up your guns so you cannot defend yourself.
Nearly 400 million firearms in America today. We should at least ensure that they're stored safely and away from our children.
So you can't defend yourself.
Representative Dina Titus's Closing the Bump Stock Loophole Act would build on existing regulations banning the manufacture, sale, or possession of bump stocks for civilian use. Remember, it was the Trump administration that first enacted this ban on devices that essentially convert semi-automatic weapons into machine guns and serve no purpose other than to maximize carnage, as we learned when they were used in the deadly shooting in Las Vegas that killed 58 people in 2018. Finally, Representative Ted Deutsch's Keep Americans Safe Act would ban the sale, manufacture, and illegal possession of gun magazines that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition. High-capacity magazines are designed for mass killing and have been the accessory of choice in some of the bloodiest shootings in our history, including the 2007 shooting at Virginia Tech and the 1999 shooting at Columbine High School. I am reminded that the shooter in Aurora, Colorado in 2012 murdered 12 people and not the entire movie theater only because his 100-round magazine jammed during the shooting. At the outset, let me say that each of these proposals is wildly popular with the American public, although that has not stopped many Republican officials from speaking out in recent days against passing sensible gun safety legislation. Because we know from experience that few events expose the emptiness of the gun lobby's rhetoric, like the mass murder of school children, allow me to rebut some of my Republican colleagues' arguments in advance. Nobody seriously believes that Hollywood or video games are to blame for the epidemic of gun violence in America. Our children watch the same movies and play the same games as children in Canada and England and Japan. Only in the United States, we ask the parents of elementary school children to stand in line so we can match their DNA to the remains of their children, because only the United States is awash in 400 million guns. You say that these deaths were caused by a lack of mental health care? I agree that we need to do more for those in our communities who may be in crisis. And I hope that you will join me the next time we are asked to fund such initiatives. I expect that many of my Republican colleagues will not. But I note again that other countries have people who are just as sick Americans, and that those countries do not experience the gun violence that we do here. You say it's too soon to take action, that we are politicizing these tragedies to enact new policies? It has been 23 years since Columbine, 15 years since Virginia Tech, 10 years since Sandy Hook, 7 years since Charleston, 4 years since Parkland and Santa Fe and the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. It has been 3 years since El Paso. It has been a week since we learned again that gun violence can reach any of our children and grandchildren at any time, and that no number of armed guards can guarantee their safety. It has not even been 24 hours since the last mass shooting, and who knows how long until the next one. Too soon? My friends, what the hell are you waiting for? You say that none of the solutions proposed here will stop gun violence in America? Well, there, sadly, I agree. This bill will not alone save every life we will lose to gun violence this year.
It won't save any
It will
lives.
save some. It might have saved those children in Uvalde. And whoever saves one life, he says, if he saved the entire world. The American people are begging for us to address this crisis. Let us not wait 1 second longer. I urge my colleagues to support the Protecting Our Kids Act, and I yield back. I now recognize the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, life is precious, especially the lives of children. What happened in Uvalde, Texas is tragic. It is every family's worst nightmare. Our hearts go out to the Uvalde community and especially to the families who've lost loved ones last week in this evil act of violence. And of course, there's what happened yesterday in Tulsa and a few weeks ago in Buffalo, and our hearts go out to those families as well. No one wants another tragedy. No one wants this to happen again. That's regretful that Democrats have rushed to a markup today in what seems more like political theater than a real attempt at improving public safety or finding solutions. Democrats never once reached out to us to seek our input on the legislation we're considering here today. Protecting children is not a Republican or Democrat issue. The Democrats cobbled together a package of measures. This is not a real attempt, in my judgment, to find solutions. Everyone here knows the reality. Democrats are in control of the House. Anything that you and Speaker Pelosi want to pass, you can pass. And frankly, you've already passed numerous bills related to firearms this Congress. But because those bills are radical attempts to legislate away Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens, the Senate has not taken up the legislation, just like it won't take up this bill. What we are doing here is just designed to appeal to Democratic primary voters. The bill won't make our schools safer. It will hamper the rights of law-abiding citizens, and it will do nothing to stop mass shootings. We need to get serious about understanding why this keeps happening. Democrats are always fixated on curtailing the rights of law-abiding citizens rather than trying to understand why this evil happens. Until we figure out the why, we will always mourn losses without fixing the problem. Our job is to figure out the why. The bill that Democrats are putting forward today does not help us to understand what's really driving some young men to commit these heinous acts. The bill before us is short-sighted and not solutions-oriented. It's a one-size-fits-all approach that punishes law-abiding citizens while doing nothing to make our community safer. We all want to keep children safe in school, but this bill wouldn't do that. This bill is just another Democrat attack on the Second Amendment, and it's likely just the start.
Yes.
President Biden has said he wants to ban all 9mm handguns. Where does it end? The American people expect and deserve more from us than political charades that rehash old ideas and don't actually solve the underlying problems. Mr. Chairman, we should do better than this. I yield back and look forward to the debate on the legislation.
Thank God for Jim Jordan, folks, one of the few sane people on this committee.
Be included in the record. I now recognize myself for purposes of offering an amendment in the nature of a substitute. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 7910, offered by Mr. Nadler of New York.
Without objection, the amendment in the nature of a substitute will be considered as read and shall be considered as base text for purposes of amendment. I will recognize myself to explain the amendment. The amendment makes only cosmetic changes and makes no substantive changes to the bill. I urge all members to support it, and I yield back the balance of my time. Are there any amendments to the amendment in the nature of a substitute? For what purpose does Ms. Jackson Lee seek recognition?
I'd like to strike the last word.
Young lady is recognized.
A few minutes before this hearing, I spoke to Mr. Garza. Spent time with Mr. Garza in Uvalde this past Sunday. Marie, just a baby in the 4th grade, dialed 911. She may have saved or tried to save many lives. In the pillage, carnage, and death, what was to be.
Folks, we're going to pause here for a few minutes on this audio feed and give you guys a recap on what's happening right now. This is the official committee action. This is the official committee markup on H.R. 7910. This is the massive gun control bill that's being heard right now in Washington, D.C. Sheila Jackson Lee, who is talking right now opposite this screen, is a blithering hate America idiot who has filed the worst gun control bills that we have seen this entire Congress. It is absolutely horrific stuff, folks, and we have got to stay involved in this fight immediately. Guys, this is happening right now. We have Patrick Parsons, our EVP, in the room right now, working with staff, talking with people, trying to see where this bill is going to go from here. You're going to hear from him later on today, but I just want to be clear on this. Sheila Jackson Lee, Nadler, all of these people, they hate our freedoms. They hate you, and they hate our Second Amendment, and their goal is to do everything they can to use the bodies of dead children in Uvalde, Texas, dead Americans in Buffalo, New York, to disarm the entire country. They're shameless ghouls who want to do everything they can to crush our Second Amendment rights. Now is the time to fight back. We have a new action link set up right here. It's stophr7910.com, hr7910.com. Please take a moment, and that email goes right to your congressman, and it tells him to stand up and hold the line against this bill. If they're a Republican, if they're a Democrat, it tells them, if you vote for this trash, you're going to lose your reelection in many cases. And you guys are probably going to lose your majority in Congress because of trash like this. So take a moment, hit that new action campaign, stophr7910.com, and then get involved in our fight, guys, at joinafa.org and get involved in our fight. We're going to bounce back here to audio and momentarily. But again, this is Sheila Jackson Lee. She is the worst, perhaps the worst nut job in the entire Congressional Democratic Caucus. She filed H.R. 121, 125, 127, the worst bills in this Congress. And she's a leading co-sponsor on today's bill, H.R. 7910. This is live coverage, folks, of this committee hearing. We're going to see what happens today. They may have the committee vote may likely happen today. They may delay. We're going to find out. And then from there, we're going to see if it goes to the floor and how fast it goes to the floor. But this is all part of the optics. You see this, all the children behind her. These people don't give a damn about your children. They don't give a damn about those children. They simply use these children as props in their agenda to attack your gun rights. They should be ashamed of themselves. Of course, they're soulless ghouls. They don't have any shame. So guys, stand up, fight back, hammer back, stophr7910.com. We'll go back right now to some more tyrannical garbage from Sheila Jackson Lee.
To Boulder, Atlanta, Tree of Life, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, Las Vegas, San Bernardino, Gilroy, Garlic, Washington Navy Yard, Sandy Hook,
Elementary, Virginia Tech, Aurora, the Sikh Temple, Emmanuel African Methodist Church, or Santa Fe in Texas, near my district. El Paso, if I did not mention it. So today, reminded of the great and outstanding work of my colleagues. I thank you. You have introduced these bills over and over again, and I'll have an opportunity to discuss how important your legislation is, but we are not finished. The assault weapons ban is a necessity. A 7-week waiting period is a necessity. Actions against manufacturers to give civil liability is a necessity. And countering the cycle of violence is a necessity. I end by simply saying Kimberly Vaughn died in Santa Fe. She was 17 years old. Her mother is still in pain in Texas. And I'm calling on all of you to have a sense of humanity, courage, decency. God knows we need action, for it is a sin and a shame on us. Not this Judiciary Committee, Mr. Nadler. You have done great work on the House and the Senate, and then to the President's desk. Shame on us. We can't move legislation now. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. For what purposes Mr. Shabbat seek recognition?
Move strike layer 4, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. It's obviously with a heavy heart that we're all participating in this markup today. Words cannot adequately express the horror that all Americans felt last week as we learned of the 21 innocent lives that were lost at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, which only added to the deep sadness we all felt a short time earlier when 10 people were senselessly killed in Buffalo. Given the shock and the revulsion that we all feel from those two horrific crimes, it's easy to understand why we're considering this legislation today. It's only human nature to search for answers and feel the need to do something to address a situation this troubling and this concerning. But the question we need to ask ourselves before we act, Mr. Chairman, is what actions can we take in a constitutionally permissive manner that will actually help make the American people, particularly school children, safer? The most obvious answer to that question is that we can take action to make our schools more secure. After the tragic shooting in Parkland, Florida, former sheriff himself led a bipartisan group of members, myself included, in reauthorizing and expanding the Cop Secure Our Schools grant program. That program provides necessary funds to states and local school districts to strengthen security measures at schools across the country. The money can be used for metal detectors, to adopt security plans, to train school officials, to hire school resource officers, including retired police officers, and to help identify students with mental health issues.
Folks, his feed is locking up. It's not ours. He's having a problem on his own feed, just so you know.
There's always room for improvement. And that's one area where I believe we should be working together to find common ground and make students safer, and it would be immediately. I also think we could work together on methods to better address the mental health crisis that's facing so many of our nation's youth today. Too often, the shootings that occur are perpetrated by primarily young men who feel marginalized and who appear to be suffering from some form or another of mental illness. Finding a way to identify these young people earlier and to help get them the treatment that they need before the goal upon which I think we could all agree. As I mentioned earlier, the Secure Our Schools grant money can be used for that purpose. But as we saw in Buffalo, the issue is broader than just in our schools. There was also some agreement on bump stocks, which is why the ATF under President Trump acted to ban them. As most of us know, there's still an ongoing challenge in the federal courts against this ban, which is probably why a provision banning bump stock is included in the legislation being considered today. I understand the intention here, but I would probably, I think it'd be more effective if we allowed the court cases.
Folks, I just want to be clear on this. Steve Shabbat is a Republican from Ohio. And as you just heard, this guy is promoting, he is okay with banning bump stocks. This is happening right now across the entire Capitol building. You have Republicans who are making deals with Democrats right now, trying to find what of our freedoms can we give up? How much can we give away? And then maybe we'll appease these anti-gun zealots. Folks, this is a failed tactic. This has been working. This has been used by the NRA, rather, for generations, and it's never worked. We have given up on fixed NICS. We surrendered on bump stocks. We almost got red flag laws a couple of years ago because the NRA was okay with this. And that's why you have Republicans like Steve Chabot right now saying, hey, it's okay. It's okay. We'll give away our bump stocks. That's not a big problem with us. And folks, this is how we have lost every bit of gun rights freedom that we've lost over the last 25 years. This is how we got the NICS system. This is how we've got all of the expansions of gun control in this country, is by giving these little pieces at a time to all of these radical leftists. Steve Chabot is a pathetic excuse for a Republican who should be standing up there and saying, I will not support any attempt to infringe on the Second Amendment. What a joke.
Whose legislation Ethan's law is an important component of the Protecting Our Kids Act to be entered into the record. For what purposes, Mr. Cohen seek recognition?
Strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
This is no rush to action. This has been delayed for decades. I was here 15 years ago when Virginia Tech was the site of a mass killing.
What a nut.
And in 15 years, we haven't gotten gun laws changed and reformed. This bill, which is somewhat of a compilation of other laws, all should have been law before, but should be law today. And the Democrats are not rushing to anything. The public is demanding that we take action because they've seen what happened in Uvalde, Texas. They've seen what happened in Buffalo. They've seen what happened last night in Tulsa. It is happening all too often, and it's deadly. Assault weapons were banned from 1994 to 2004. It was constitutionally permissible. It wasn't until 2008 in the Heller decision when Justice Scalia said that people had a right based on the Second Amendment to protect their homes with reasonable weapons, and said that that was not something that would prohibit government from having more restrictive laws on people who had mental health problems and or people who had criminal backgrounds or other possible changes in the law. The Second Amendment, like the First, is not absolute. The First Amendment, you cannot defame people. You cannot go into a theater and holler fire. There are limits, and there are limits to the Second Amendment.
No,
Assault weapons,
there's not.
One of those limits we've had for 10 years. During that time, we had less mass killings in this country, and we should have it again. Assault weapons are made to kill. The picture that Miss Jackson Lee had up here of those 19 children, the last time you'll be able, or anybody would be able to recognize some of them. Because when they're hit with an assault weapon, they cannot be identified. They are obliterated.
Oh, come
And
on.
they need DNA to identify them. They put holes in their bodies so large that there's no way they could survive. They are weapons of war and weapons of death and weapons of destruction that we should not permit out here. And when somebody who's 18 years old and right after their birthday, they go and one of the first things they do is buy an assault weapon, that should be a red flag. Where is that person coming from? That's what they want on their 18th birthday, is an assault weapon. They got a problem, which means we got a problem, which means
I bought an AR-15 the day I turned 18, folks. I bet many of you people did as well. Listen to the hatred in this idiot's voice. Again, it's just dripping. They hate you. Anybody who buys a gun is automatically a criminal in the making. They're all full of crap. The comments here are blowing up. These guys are full of trash. This guy is from Tennessee, for heaven's sakes. These people are evil psychopaths, and their goal is to use these kids to take away every gun you've got. Does anybody hearing this think these people want to stop at this or stop at that? No, this is a full-on assault on every single thing that we own. And guys, they're never going to stop. So get involved right away, guys. StopHR7910.com. StopHR7910.com. And that email goes right to your congressman, and it says, you better vote no on this legislation. This is happening very fast. Angie Holt says, They will never stop. Guys, tell me where you're watching from. This guy is from Tennessee. Do we have folks watching right now in Tennessee? Because this is not just an East Coast problem or a left coast problem. There is little tyrants like this all over the country. And again, we have Republicans now who are already saying, oh, we can agree with parts of this. We can agree with parts of that. So your Republican state rep needs to hear from you, not your rep, not state rep. Your Republican rep needs to hear from you. So does your Democrat rep, because right now, guys, this is all hands on deck, and you have got to make your voice heard. You can hear these people are insane. This is not based on fact. This is not based on numbers. This is not based on studies. This is a mental disease. And these people want to disarm every single one of us so that we're all helpless. And people like Cohen here, they go home at night and they watch the unrest around the world. They watch what happened in Venezuela a year and a half ago. They watch all of these other national governments that are dictatorial regimes where the people have no right to keep and bear arms. And that is what they lust for here in America. They want to have that kind of control over you and I. And folks, again, this is never going to stop. Look at his face. This is a disease. These people are nuts. They'll stop at nothing to come after us, guys. Get involved in this fight today. Join AFA.org. Become a member today. Let's go back to some more live coverage.
Please strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the day after the Uvalde shooting,
Andy Biggs.
to meet with CBP Chief Ortiz and also talk with marshals who were on the scene in that school. I happened to be in South Texas at that time. And it is not a tragedy. It is beyond a tragedy. A tragedy imputes some kind of non-intentional or accidental events. This was beyond that. This was a deliberate, malicious, evil event by this 18-year-old young man. And so it's beyond a tragedy, and it most certainly does need to be addressed and needs to be investigated further. There have been multiple accounts, as there normally would be, from parents, from law enforcement who was on the scene, from Border Patrol agents, the BORTAC unit, etc. I hope that we can get to the bottom of exactly what transpired there so we understand it more fully. I also express more than just heartfelt thoughts towards the families who were affected and the community itself that was impacted by this. I also think it's important, Mr. Chairman, to consider a whole host of additional pieces of information. And I'm throughout the course of the day, I will submit various studies, articles dealing with these gun shootings. For instance, Mr. Chairman, I submit for the record a piece entitled "Chicago's had most mass shootings in the U.S. since 2018. What's the solution?"
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's from CBS Chicago that was discussing that post Uvalde. And also, Mr. Chairman, another piece called "Chicago had 971 shootings in the first half of the year, while violence is trending down from the pandemic peak. It is still way too high."
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The left and the Democrats' response to virtually every problem is to take more power and control into the national government and take away individual rights or throw taxpayers' money at the problem, sometimes both. That's why they tend to exacerbate virtually every problem without resolution. They misidentify the cause of virtually every effect. The misuse of guns for criminal or even evil purposes is another example. Millions of Americans safely and responsibly own and use guns. Previous Democrat-controlled departments of justice have conservatively estimated that guns are used 1.5 million times per year to save lives. I repeat, the Department of Justice, under Democrat control and leadership, under Democrat administrations, have done their studies and conservatively estimated that guns are used 1.5 million times per year to save lives. Other studies.
Folks, this is Andy Biggs, Congressman Andy Biggs. He's trying to fight back against this agenda, but you can see, folks, that we have got to be active. We've got to push hard. I mean, he's doing a good job at trying to give an academic response to gun control, but this is a fight. This is the fight of our lives, folks. They're not trying to tweak around the edges. They're trying to go for everything that we hold dear. So, folks, join in this fight. This is the hearing happening live right now in Congress today. But folks, again, we already know for a fact now that congressional Democrats have already scheduled floor action on HR 2377 for next week. That's red flag gun seizures. That is happening. It's on the agenda. Steny Hoyer announced that earlier today. He did not give a date time, but it's going to happen next week. We know from last night's news release on thehill.com that Pelosi has said she will be pushing to put an AW ban, an assault weapons ban. Their terminology, I know it's an action, not an item. They're going to have a vote on a bill to ban AR-15s very soon. Very soon. They want to take away all your ARs, hundreds of similar firearms, red flag gun seizures, and Chuck Schumer just put HR 8, this is universal background checks, on the Senate debate calendar. It is eligible to proceed. Let's see here who's going to speak next. In the meantime, go to stophr7910.com, stophr7910.com, and let's see who's up here next. Hold on.
Texas, our souls are crushed, our hearts are broken, but many minds are wondering, why is this still happening? No, this is not rushing. No, it's not premature. 23 years have passed since Columbine, and the time is now to act. Enough is enough. We cannot allow another disgrace like what happened in Uvalde to tear apart one more community and to tear up more families. Jacqueline Cáceres, Makina Lee Elrod, Jose Manuel Flores.
They keep asking, how does this keep happening? Why does this keep happening? Of course, their goal is to use this to advance gun control. We all know that. But let's get real about this. These same people, these same ghouls, they've taken God out of our schools. They've jacked our children full of psychotropic drugs, and they feed them a diet of hatred from K through 12 to hate the founding fathers, to hate our country, to hate everything that we've stood for as a country for hundreds of years. And they get these kids wound up as tight as a drum. And then they sit back and say, oh my God, it's the gun's fault. It's the gun's fault. These people know exactly what they're doing. They're winding our children up. They're just feeding them a diet of hatred and bullshit drugs most of their entire lives. And then they're shocked. They're shocked. I'm not saying that they're doing this on purpose. I'm saying that they know damn well good in their heart that this is part of the conversation they will never talk about. Why is this happening? They will only ever blame the gun. They will not talk about God. They will not talk about morality. They will not talk about how it's okay, how they say it's okay to let boys be girls and girls be boys and confuse these children from the age of 4 years old. Nope, it's the gun's fault. Some great comments here. Andrew Ellis says, man, arm the teachers, arm the schools, arm the administrators. This problem will go away. Yeah, you're damn right. You're damn right. It's obvious that cops in schools, that SROs, the SRO program is not sufficient for the task. We saw this in Parkland, Florida. We saw this last week in Uvalde, Texas. There was cops on scene and they didn't do a damn thing. The cop in Florida was terrified. He hid in the corner. We saw him on CCTV camera footage. And we all know now that in Uvalde, Texas, dozens of cops were in the hallway and did not enter into that room because they might have been shot. Folks, I mean, we're not going to get off on that topic right now because we all know the truth about that. The point is, cops cannot do it. Cops cannot be there in time. Cops cannot be everywhere at one time. And even when they're there, as we've seen now in Uvalde and Parkland, I'm sorry, it didn't work. And so we have got to arm teachers. And I want to be clear on that for some liberal trolls who are on our page right now. We're not saying we're going to give everybody a Glock 9 with their ID badge the day they're hired. Don't be an idiot. What we're saying is that people who are already armed, teachers that are already able to carry firearms, teachers who are already wanting to carry a firearm should have the option to carry a firearm to defend themselves and children.
To speak on the amendment?
Clerk will report the amendment. Oh, the gentleman strikes the last word. The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, the atrocity in Uvalde is shocking and heartbreaking in so many ways. The slaughter of innocents is the greatest of all human crimes, and I think it rightly prompts soul searching by all men and women of goodwill for the causes and remedies. It's disturbing, though, some have used this and other recent attacks to justify either partisan attacks, like we just heard, or policies as before us today to make it harder for law-abiding citizens to obtain firearms in the hope that by doing so, that someday maybe they'll become unavailable to the lawless. I think this overlooks the obvious immediate action that is long overdue in this world of sin and woe. You know, if you walk into any bank in this country, you'll see at least one armed guard whose purpose is to protect our money with lethal force. And yet at Uvalde and so many other school shootings, we were not willing to protect our children with the same force as we protect our money. No one gives a second thought to an armed guard at a bank, yet the left is outraged by the mere suggestion of placing an armed guard at every school filled with innocent children. And when are we going to get serious and take the world as it is rather than how we wish it should be? Even for those trained and licensed to carry concealed weapons, it was against both state and federal law to bring a firearm into the Robb Elementary School.
Yes.
Every administrator, every teacher, every janitor obeyed that law. The only person who didn't was the madman.
Exactly.
And that, in a nutshell, is the danger of gun control laws. You know, we have more than 50 years of experience now with these laws. They are extremely effective at disarming law-abiding citizens, as they were that tragic day in Uvalde. They are extremely ineffective at disarming madmen and criminals, as they also were that day. They create an environment where the gunman is king. Now, after every tragedy, politicians rush to pass more gun control laws, as we're doing today. We've been doing this now for 50 years. If these laws actually worked, wouldn't things be getting better by now rather than worse? The
Good point.
proportion of households with firearms has dropped significantly in the last 40 years. Shouldn't things be getting better and not worse? Meanwhile, we've neglected the obvious. The dangerously mentally ill are not confined and treated as they were in the past. I calculated in California alone, we'd have roughly 100,000 more mentally ill confined in mental facilities today if we maintained the same proportion of the populations in 1960. Those 100,000 dangerously mentally ill are out on our streets instead. Secondly, gun criminals often escape prosecution at the hands of woke district attorneys.
Yes.
Just one example. Hunter Biden illegally acquired a handgun despite being an admitted drug addict, a handgun that ended up being taken out of a public trash can 500 feet from a school. He also lied on his firearms application. Nobody's prosecuting him despite there being no dispute as to the facts. Why not? But most obviously and immediately, in almost every one of these atrocities, there was no shoot back. Ironically, just such an event happened the very next day in Charleston, West Virginia. A criminal with an AR-15 style rifle approached a graduation party. He fired into the crowd but missed. Moments later, a woman with a concealed weapons permit returned fire and killed him on the spot. You probably haven't heard of that incident because on that occasion, there was a good guy with the freedom to return fire. That freedom was denied at Robb Elementary School. You know, if we could actually banish all guns from all criminals, sign me up. But I suspect that gun laws will be about as effective at keeping guns out of the hands of madmen and terrorists and criminals as our drug laws have been at keeping drugs out of the hands of addicts. The difference is the drug laws don't disarm law-abiding citizens from defending themselves. Gun laws do. The one thing we can do right now, this instant, that will have an immediate effect in stopping such slaughters is to assure that every school has the same protection as your average bank, and that every school official with licensing can carry a concealed weapon if they choose. And if we're not willing to take that simple, immediate, and wholly effective step, then we're obviously not serious about stopping these outrages. I yield back.
Fire from Tom McClintock.
This is the gentleman from Rhode Island seeking recognition.
I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I want to begin by thanking you for this markup and for bringing this really important piece of legislation to the committee. Guns have become the leading cause of death for American kids. Let that sink in. The leading cause of death.
Such
For those who have
BS.
said, oh, we're rushing this, more than 311,000 students have experienced gun violence since Columbine. So tell the parents who lost children, tell the family members who saw loved ones slaughtered that we're rushing. The real question is, why has it taken us so long? And there's one reason. We don't have Republican colleagues in the fight with us. We passed 2 bills to strengthen criminal background checks. Our ranking member just described those as radical attempts to take away the Second Amendment to explain Republican inaction in the Senate. That's a bill supported by 90% of the American people. Common sense, as well as closing the Charleston loophole. Enough with these bogus arguments about the Second Amendment. This is about fulfilling our responsibility to keep our constituents safe from gun violence. We have a gun violence epidemic in this country. Over 200 mass shootings.
Folks, we're not going to air this bullshit on our channel and give him an unfettered access to people. Look, this is exactly Michael Overton took my comment out of my mouth. I thought COVID was the #1 killer of children. Again, they had no problem. They have no problem with children being murdered in the womb up to and after the moment of birth. They have no problem locking our kids away out of school for a whole year for some for their version of what a COVID response could have been. They have no problem demonizing our children and feeding them a diet of BS all day long in our schools. The moment that they have a chance to use our children in this capacity, though, here we go. So spare us your fake BS, Representative. This is the guy, Celine, who is pushing the assault weapons ban in the House. I believe it's 1808. I believe it's HR 1808. This is the guy who wants to make you a felon. Make you a felon for buying an AR-15 or any similar firearm. Somebody here is commenting from Wapello, Iowa. Where is that comment? I have been to the gun shop there in Wapello where they make AR-15s. I lost your comment. I'm sorry. It's just they're popping up so fast. But these are the people. This is the guy. He is the one pushing the bill. Man, what's that number? Is the AW ban in the House? HR 1808. Go find out for me. I think it's 1808. And this bill is the one that Pelosi has promised a vote to be taking place on in the very near future. Spare us your speeches. Spare us your fake tears. You people are lying scumbags, and the American people know it. Folks, keep the pressure on. We have a brand new advocacy campaign set up for you guys right now. It's stophr7910.com, hr7910.com. And that is your email opposing this bill that they're having the committee hearing on right now in Washington, D.C. I want to make sure you guys know that our EVP, Patrick Parsons, is in this room right now, giving us live intel. He's talking with staff. He's texting with members, giving us live updates. And we're going to have a live video with Patrick once this committee hearing is over. We'll maybe have some members on. We're going to wait and see, but a lot more coming yet today. But this is the time to get involved in the fight. StopHR7910.com. Get involved. And I see people in the comments saying, well, yeah, but this is never going to pass the Senate. Yeah, folks, that's not the case. We have a real problem right now. The brief review on the math on this is very simple. Schumer needs 50 votes to pass anything right now 60 votes to pass anything right now in the Senate, 60. He has 50 in his conference if they all vote the same way. He has 5 other Republicans who are currently in negotiations, sanctioned by Mitch McConnell, trying to find a compromise bill that all sides can agree to. Those 5, Lindsey Graham, Tom Tillis, Susan Collins, Mitt Romney, John Cornyn, and maybe even some others. If they are on board, that's 55. And folks, we have 5 other rhino senators who are retiring this year who are not seeking re-election. Folks, they have nothing left to lose. Talking about people like Rob Portman from Ohio, people like Roy Blunt from Missouri, a true loser, Pat Toomey from Pennsylvania, Shelby and from Alabama, Richard Burr from North Carolina. We are not safe. We are not out of the woods, not by a long shot. So fire off those emails today. Make your voice heard. Stop HR7910.com. Let's go back to some more live video.
You know, I was just thinking, so I'm going to take up the gentleman from Rhode Island's challenge. He just said that there's really not any significant constitutional issue at stake whatsoever. The Constitution doesn't prohibit this. It seems to me that you'd have to know, wouldn't you? I mean, I looked at the majority guidance, staff guidance on this, and it has this one sentence about talking about some states having adopted bans on 18 to 20-year-olds.
If the gentleman will yield, I'm happy to answer that.
Take your time. Let me speak to it for a minute so I can thicken the plot. Just a minute, Mr. Cicilline. You said that, or the majority guidance says, yet these laws, speaking of bans in some states on semi-automatic rifles being banned to 18 to 20-year-olds, yet these laws have been challenged in the federal courts. They referenced 2 cases, didn't say anything else about it. Well, I decided to read them. And so the Jones versus Bonta case from the 9th Circuit, one of the most liberal circuits in the country, federal case, just came down last month. It said California's ban on the sale of centerfire of semi-automatic rifles to 18 to 20-year-olds violates the Constitution.
Yes.
It says that it goes through this long analysis of the history of the Second Amendment and says those rights to self-defense at the core of the Second Amendment, that 18 to 20-year-olds are covered by that right. They say just like virtually every other, in fact, I think every other right in the Bill of Rights applies to 18 to 20-year-olds. And there's another case. There's a case from the 4th Circuit from where I come from. It was vacated for mootness after being issued, but it was an analysis of the federal ban on sales of handguns to 18 to 20-year-olds. And it said, this came to the same conclusion, that the Second Amendment applies. And even the dissenting judge there said, here the majority has done careful historical research and has assembled persuasive evidence that young adults aged 18 to 20 had Second Amendment rights at the time the amendment was ratified. So when we undertake to do something, in the words of the gentle lady from Texas, isn't it incumbent on the House Judiciary Committee to consider, to evaluate what the Constitution allows Congress to do consistent with the supreme law of the land? So at least 2 parts of this proposed hodgepodge raise questions about constitutionality. The ban on the sale of semi-automatic rifles and shotguns to 18 to 20-year-olds, and also the provision about gun storage at home. Heller, by the United States Supreme Court, spoke to that. Why would there be no analysis or no consideration? But there's a willingness to just ram through this package, and the answer is, we don't have any patience for you if you're objecting. The voices are raised, the accusations are made, Republicans are complicit. I can tell you this, let me be clear. You are not going to bully your way into stripping Americans of fundamental rights. And it also, unfortunately, it follows a pattern that we've discussed before. Just a couple of weeks ago, you ran through a bill concerning amicus briefs in the Supreme Court that would require the disclosure of charitable organization donors in violation of their First Amendment rights of association. I pointed it out then, that you had attempted to do, the same party had attempted to do the same thing in 1958 in the NAACP case in Alabama. That you did the same thing, not coincidentally, in California, since we're talking about the California, the 9th Circuit decision. In another case involving Mr. Bonta, the Attorney General out there, just last year, You just blundered right over that because you don't care. You're cavalier about the leak of the draft opinion from the Supreme Court. You want to pack the Supreme Court.
If the gentleman will yield, I'm happy to answer your question.
No, I think I've answered the question, but I'd be glad.
Not accurately.
You're in the disregard what the Ninth Circuit has said the
No,
law of the
I'm
land
actually
is?
bound by the Supreme Court of the United States, and I'd like to read the quote to you if you'll allow me, since you raised the question.
Look, I think the issue is what that Ninth Circuit case
Well,
said
the-
on the subject.
The United
of
States
continuing
Supreme
to
Court
legislate. I
takes
don't
precedence
yield.
over the Ninth
I
Circuit.
don't yield. You'll have plenty of time.
Yes.
Your allies form mobs outside justices' homes. Yeah. You say you've got to figure out something else other than stripping people of their constitutional rights. We've got to figure out something else, assuming that the majority entertains a discussion. But you cannot, the courts have made it pretty clear, you cannot deprive young adults any more than the remainder of Americans of their core Second Amendment right to self-defense by the purchase and possession of weapons that are in common use and prevalent. And I'll say I'm out of time.
Fire from Dan Bishop in North Carolina, the best we've heard today.
Chairman.
recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank you for calling us to this emergency markup of the Protecting Our Kids Act. It is timely. In fact, we've all been clamoring for this kind of legislation for a very, very long time. I'm stunned by some of the words that we're hearing on the other side of the aisle. Where is their outrage over the slaughter of 19 fourth graders and their 2 teachers? Why don't they feel an urgency to do something? I'm reminded of the John Donne poem that ends, "Do not ask for whom the bell tolls."
All right, this is too much insanity for us to listen to in real time, folks. You can see her Every Town for Gun Safety t-shirt right behind her in the chair. Here come the fake tears. I mean, look, real moms would fight and give their lives to defend their children. My wife would give her life to defend our 7 kids. I'm sure every woman watching our feed right now would do whatever is necessary to defend your children. And as Michelle Holly is saying, hey, fool, where's your outrage for partial birth abortion? I mean, these people have no problem slaughtering tens of millions of unborn babies. They don't give a damn about your children. This is all a prop. Shame on them. Of course, they have no shame. Shame on them for what they're talking about here. These are evil people. And they are determined to do everything they can to take away your firearms. You know, just one of the 5 or 6 things that we have in this bill today I want to talk about briefly, and that is the safe storage requirement they keep talking about. Let's be clear on what this means. If you have a child in your home, like I have in mine, if you may ever have a child in your home, if you have friends over to visit or whatever else the case may be, if you ever have a kid in your home, then this bill would require you to have your firearms locked up, securely stored 24/7 or on your hip. What does that mean? Well, if you have a gun next to your bed at night, you'd be a felon. I mean, how about you have a 17-year-old son or daughter? They're basically an adult. I mean, my 16-year-old is damn sure more mature than many men these days. If I was to leave and I leave him with a firearm for self-defense, that would be a crime under this proposal, HR 7910. We discussed this last night briefly. After today's video feed is done, Google the Merced, California Pitchfork murders, and you can read for yourself what happened to this family back in the early 2000s when the dad unfortunately followed the storage requirement. And a madman who was naked, high off of his mind on some kind of narcotic, armed with a pitchfork, broke in their home at 10 a.m. Mom and dad were taking 2 vehicles to drop one of them off at the shop to get the brakes done. And in that short time span, this madman breaks into their home with a pitchfork. And the oldest daughter, I think her name was Jennifer, ran to get her dad's revolver It was cable locked, and she could not find the key. And she had to listen to her siblings being pitchforked to death by a madman because she could not fight back. All she could do was push other siblings out the bedroom window, run to a neighbor's house, call 911. When the cops came, they had to shoot him over 25 times because he was so jacked up on narcotics. This is the reality of gun control. This is what we saw in Buffalo with magazine limits. This is what we saw in Uvalde with gun-free zones, and we're going to see it again in spades if they enact these storage requirements that force you to put your firearms in a safe basically 24/7. It will never stop a criminal. Eric is saying that Matt Gaetz is up next. Matt Gaetz is someone we will definitely cut to. Eric, I'm getting texts also from our team there in the Capitol right now. So we're going to rock and roll with that. But folks, this is life and death stuff. This is not about some academic concept. We're not arguing about the founder's intent. This is not some dry philosophical conversation. This is real life. Real people live and die, whether based on the gun control laws on the books in these states, in our country, and we have got to fight back and fight back hard. Go to stophr7910.com and fire off your email while there's still time. She's getting wound up now. We'll see the tears come, and she'll drop them right there into her Starbucks cup. You're right into her $10 latte right there. Yep, here come the tears. Here they come. No tears for the unborn that they slaughter. Couldn't give a crap less. Here we go.
I'll confess I don't know much about the gun lobby that my colleague referenced because I don't meet with any lobbyists. I don't take their donations, and I don't take any donations from any of the political action committees that are for or against any of these measures. But I can speak for law-abiding gun owners who are very concerned about some of the bills that are before us. It is reflexive and it is irresponsible to consider bills while we're still trying to figure out what happened in some of these circumstances that you suggest animated the need for this hearing. Chairman referenced Uvalde in the first moments of this hearing, but yet we're still deciphering key elements of the law enforcement response, of the physical plant, of points of intrusion. And it is not kind, it is not compassionate to tell people that you're doing something to help them when in fact you have no idea whether or not this legislation that you fashioned would in fact do that. I would suggest that it's potentially cruel to tell people that they've inspired a response to a tragedy when in fact that response won't work. Who would want to be associated with such a thing? My colleagues asked the question, where's the outrage? I would observe that perhaps outrage isn't the most responsible and pensive way to write a bill, to address a problem. I heard on Sunday, Senator Chris Murphy praise the Florida legislation in response to the violence in Parkland. And while there's a lot in that legislation I didn't like, mainly the gun control, there were provisions that I think we could work on that have made schools safer in Florida. For example, no longer leaving schools as gun-free zones, as soft targets in many cases, has improved the force multiplier for law enforcement. In fact, of Florida's 67 counties, 45 have opted into the Sentinel program we created in our state to get rid of the gun-free zones and to allow former members of our military, former tactical operators, former members of law enforcement to be there for their children to keep them safe so that we don't have to relive these tragedies. There was also more training that was actually required, mandatory, rigorous in Florida. That would be something that we might want to think about and might want to encourage. But it is similarly irresponsible here in the Judiciary Committee for us to just ignore the jurisprudence that's happening around the country. When you have the Ninth Circuit, the Fourth Circuit, developing law around the notion that you can't just deprive someone of their Second Amendment rights who's committed no offense other than not having achieved the age of 21 once they're an American adult. Sort of like Congressman Massey's legislation that maybe everyone who's a voter or on their way to vote ought to have the opportunity to carry a firearm to ensure that they're not subject to any intimidation. I heard my colleague, Mr. Cohen, talk about the need to pass this legislation despite the fact that it will stop law-abiding citizens from being able to exercise their right. And I guess that is the accepted collateral damage. What people need to hear is that stopping law-abiding citizens from exercising their rights is okay, even in a world in which we're not making school shootings less likely because we're not appropriately tailoring the remedy to the problem. We've got all this ghost guns and gun tracking legislation up today. Were any of these school shootings, were any of these guns ghost guns? You know, and so it seems to be sort of gun control in search of a tragedy to lash onto to animate the desire to have more gun control. And I believe the gentleman from Tennessee also said, well, it'll also stop the non-law abiding. And perhaps we should realize that our laws don't have their own fiat, right? They aren't in and of themselves determinative of human behavior. And to suggest, you know, I was watching the NBA Finals, and I heard Shaquille O'Neal observe that in the communities that he's familiar with, the access to guns is not the problem. Anybody can get the guns. And maybe if that's true, and he was speaking of course, non-legal ways to get guns, maybe we ought to focus on the circumstances that cause these people to commit these shootings. Maybe we ought to get rid of the gun-free zones that are causing this scourge of violence. And we ought to really put the victims first, not through virtue signaling, but through pensive, thoughtful legislation.
What'd you guys think of that?
Gentleman yields back for our purposes. The gentlelady from Georgia seek recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized.
We are paying for gun violence every single day of our lives.
Here we go.
For the weapons of war on our streets, with the blood of children sitting in our schools. We are paying for unfettered access, with mothers and fathers waiting in line.
Okay, this is crazy. Lucy McBath. Lucy McBath from Georgia is the lead sponsor. She's the sponsor of HR 2377. I'm going to look it up right now. This is the bill that Steny Hoyer, the Democratic floor leader, has promised a vote on next week in Congress. And I'm going to confirm the number of co-sponsors right now. It is, as I remember, over 150 or more co-sponsors on this bill right now. It is the federal red flag bill that would take away your guns based on the mere say-so of somebody who thinks that you might be dangerous. You might be a threat. It's HR 2377, 142 co-sponsors. I'm seeing it right now. It is this psycho's bill, Lucy McBath. It is her bill. This will be on the floor for a vote next week. Lucy McBath, people are asking, what's her name? Lucy McBath, Democrat from Georgia. This is the floor action coming up next week. Now, there's different kinds of red flag laws. There is a national funding mechanism that bribes the states to enact red flag laws, and there's a national federal red flag law. That's what this rage-filled leftist psycho is pushing, a national red flag gun seizure bill. And this is their goal because, you know, frankly, it's more, their agenda is better served by taking away all of the guns of people through red flag laws versus just an AR-15 or just a similar firearm or just a 30-round magazine. Their goal is to take away all of your guns. And the beauty about this to them is they can do it before you've ever been charged. The hell with being convicted before you've ever just been charged with a crime. And this is absolute tyranny. It violates the Fourth Amendment. It violates the Fifth Amendment. It violates the Sixth Amendment. And it obliterates the idea that we're innocent until we're proven guilty. That's what this bill is. And folks, this is the push that we're seeing right now in D.C. And again, we have many Republicans in the Senate who are on board with this. Lindsey Graham is the guy who is literally helping to broker this bill. He's all over the news all week. Google it. All in favor of red flag laws. He has $250,000 in his pocket from Michael Bloomberg in the past because he supports gun control like this. Don't trust me? You can look it up. Tom Tillis, Republican, North Carolina, all over the news this week in support of red flag gun seizures. You've got Mitt Romney, who I believe would support anything the Democrats put before him. You've got Susan Collins, who is very much in support of a red flag gun seizure bill. This is coming. This is coming. And so if you're asking yourself, what the hell is going on? We got red flags. We've got 7910 today, HR 7910. We've got HR 8, universal background checks. We have an assault weapons ban vote coming. Folks, this is by design. It's the chaos theory in action. They want you overwhelmed. They want you to be just hit from all sides at one time, and they want to see which bills they can get the votes to pass in the Congress. AFA will always give you guys the intel and the action items you need to help fight back, and we have at least 3 fights underway right now. Today, live right now in this committee, this is HR 7910. We have an action campaign set up for that. It's stophr7910.com. Go there. Hit the link. Email your congressman. Tell him to vote no. Then we have the red flag push. You're seeing crazy Lucy McBath. It's her bill. We have stopredflags.com. Go there. Send your email. That goes to your senators and congressmen and says, don't you dare vote to pass a red flag gun seizure bill. We've got a universal background checks. This is their terminology. It's a national gun registry. It's HR 8. It's already passed the Congress. It's already passed the House, and that bill, according to Chuck Schumer, has now been placed on the Senate eligibility calendar. It can be voted on at any time. That's the third item. We have action campaigns for all of those. They're all set up. A lot of you are saying I've called and I've emailed repeatedly. Thank you. Keep doing it. And also call the congressional switchboard. I'm trying to find that number right now. Actually, I don't have it. So somebody here, maybe it's in my phone. If somebody has the congressional switchboard number, post it in the comment section, and I will then pop that onto the feed here. I see one person's texting right now. The number for the switchboard, 202-224-3121. I'm going to type that right now into the messages or into the comment section here. So if you've already sent your emails on all of these different bills, call your congressman now on this number, 202-224-3121. Let's see who's next here.
Today, we're debating a gun control bill. That's
There we go.
6 gun control bills in one. And why are there 6? Because none of them work. You take 6 that don't work and put them together, they're not going to work. You can't make up for ineffective bills by having more than one or half a dozen of them. Each and every one of these gun control bills in this single title is unserious and unconstitutional and suffers from the problem, the inherent problem that almost all gun control suffers from. And that is criminals do not obey the law. They do not follow the law. Who here today thinks that criminals are going to read the Safe Storage Act and some gang members will say, oh, I better lock this gun up or else they'll come and take it.
Exactly.
Who here today thinks that a 19-year-old criminal is going to obey the restriction on age for having a gun? Nobody here believes this. These are unserious, but they're worse than that. They're going to compromise the rights and the safety of individual citizens, law-abiding citizens. Let me tell you the story of Nikki Gosser, who's testified here in Congress, and she worked for me in my congressional office. Nikki watched her husband get murdered in front of her viciously in a gun-free zone while her licensed firearm was in her car outside of the restaurant. That haunts her today. Ben and her had just recently been married and they just wanted to be in this restaurant and they followed the law, and he was murdered by her stalker in front of her. Now, she went on to get the laws changed in Tennessee to get rid of that gun-free zone. But that's one example, just one example of how all the rest of these are going to fail. The criminals do not follow the law. The biggest thing we could do that nobody on the other side of the aisle is talking about today is to quit advertising our schools as soft zones, soft targets for defenseless teachers, defenseless staff, and students who aren't being defended. Congress itself in 1990 passed the Gun-Free School Zone Act. It's done more, it's cost more lives than it has saved. Now, some states have been able to override the Gun-Free School Zone Act and create their own areas. And in those states and those school districts where that's happened, where they've allowed qualified teachers and staff to carry, there hasn't been a single mass shooting in one of those schools. There hasn't been a single shooting of one person in one of those schools. The biggest thing we could do here today is to repeal the 1990 Gun-Free School Zone Act, so that the default condition in this country is not to advertise every student as a target. Now, to Mr. Cicilline's point, he was talking about the Supreme Court. You know, in 1995, the Gun-Free School Zone Act was struck down. Why was that? Because this document does not contain the authority to implement a Gun-Free School Zone Act. So what did Congress do? They resuscitated this unconstitutional bill by putting in a provision that says, well, as long as the gun is involved in interstate commerce, well, then we have the authority. Well, I wonder if that's the case with all 6 of these useless bills in here today, because only 2 of the bills say that. It's actually 2 of the bills say it only applies to firearms involved in interstate commerce. Does that mean the other 4 are unconstitutional? Or it actually means all 6 are unconstitutional, and they're trying to save 2 of them with the provision that killed the Gun-Free School Zone Act in 1995. By the way, they overturned Mr. Lopez's conviction, and he went on to serve in the Marines, the one who was convicted of violating the Gun-Free School Zone Act. But Congress came back and resuscitated it, and unconstitutionally so. But there is a conflict between these 6 bills. Some of them recognize the constitutional flaw, and some of them don't. And I want to close with this. Some of my colleagues have said that the assault weapons ban from 1994 to 2004 reduced mass public shootings by 40%. They make up a number a lot of times, but I'll take whatever number they use. Do they know that sales of AR-15 style weapons went up from 1994 to 2004? Because it was just a cosmetic ban. So if the assault weapons ban had any effect, how did it have an effect? The ownership and sales and transfer of AR-15 style weapons went up during that period. So I would just close by saying, you can't make a good law by putting 6 bad laws together. It's not going to work. It will infringe on our constitutional rights, and the Democrats don't seem to care. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose does Mr. Johnson of Georgia seek recognition?
I move to strike the last word.
Hank Johnson.
You know, it's been 9 days since we lost 21 souls in Uvalde, Texas. 19 children and 2 teachers. We can't ignore our problem, which is out of control, gun violence in America. We must lead. We must act. We must act now. Acting now will take courage. Each of us on this committee should call forward.
The Hansons are hitting the road, and wherever.
Sorry.
Like the courage that was on display last week by those brave Border Patrol agents who put their lives at risk to stop the carnage in Uvalde.
Okay, folks, our policy here at the American Firearms Association is to not listen to anybody who believes that Guam was going to capsize and flip and drown everybody in the ocean. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, this is Congressman Hank Johnson, Democrat from Georgia, who is famously known for believing there's too many people on Guam and the island was going to flip into the freaking ocean. Don't believe me. Look it up yourself. Hank Johnson is a sponsor of the biggest gun control bill we saw last year in Congress. 5717, I believe, was the number. This guy is one of the most deranged imbeciles in the entire Congress right now. And that's saying you got to scrape the bottom of the barrel to say that. So that's that kind of a guy. You know, go back to Glenn Massey or Tom Massey for a moment. Tom Massey, one of the few guys in the entire Congress who will actually fight on the committee. And we saw some good ones here today already, but you guys hear what Massey was saying. All of this is unconstitutional. None of this will stop violent criminals. All of this will be used to disarm the American people. None of it will be effective at stopping mass shootings or anything else. Again, I just want to point out, folks, there is never going to be a time when we see these people all of a sudden say, oh, we didn't think it through. We didn't know better. This is not a function of education. It's not a function of ignorance. People like Hank Johnson, he may be damn ignorant when it comes to Guam, but these people all know what they're doing. They want to disarm you. They don't give a damn about our pocket constitutions. All they care about right now is force. And I don't mean violence. I mean nonstop political mobilization, hammering their offices, calls and emails, opposing gun control. They're having this big show today, and they might vote this thing through. We're going to wait and see. But many Democrats right now are scared that if they vote for this trash, they might lose control of Congress altogether in the midterms. Everyone knows that Biden is a dumpster fire on steroids, and if they vote for this, it may cost them their personal positions, but it may cost their party control of Congress. So we've got to hammer right now as hard as we can. We have this brand new action link set up right now. StopHR7910.com. StopHR7910.com. Go there. Take 20 seconds. Punch in your name. That email goes right to your congressman and says, don't you dare vote for this. It's custom tailored. If your congressman's a Democrat, he gets a certain email. Republicans get a separate email. Go there and take action. Same thing when it comes to red flags. Go to stopredflags.com and make your voice heard on that as well. Let me see here who is coming in for the next testimony. We may air some time here. We may not. Okay, they are adjourned. No, well, now it says they're back. I need some intel from our team here. What's going on? Oh, no, they're back now. Tom, Tiffany. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. So, guys, go to stopredflags.com. Stopredflags.com. Make your voice heard right there, right now. StopHR7910.com. Pound the Congress with calls and emails. This is how we stop gun control. They're not going to listen to our requests. They're not going to do it because we educate them. These are soulless ghouls who hate our freedom. They want to make all of us and our country into the next Venezuelan hellhole where only the government has guns. I mean, think back over the last 2.5 years. Think back with COVID and the lockdowns, the mandates. Think back to how many people wanted to forcibly make you take medical drugs that you might not have agreed with. Think of how far they've gone in 2 years. Now think of how far they would go if we were a disarmed population. My God, it'd be limitless tyranny, and that is what they want. That's what these bills are designed to do. Guys, this is terrible stuff. Get involved in our fight, guys. Go to joinafa.org. I have a photograph here. I'll flash it in the screen. Join up today. We're firing out membership packets basically around the clock right now. That is the current AFA t-shirt. That's our member decal. That comes out with all of our new membership packets. We're firing on all cylinders right now. Join that fight at joinafa.org and get involved today. This hearing, we're not sure how long it's going to go on for. We're going to keep giving you guys live commentary. We don't know until the end of this hearing if they're going to vote this thing out today, if they're going to stall. We're going to have to wait and see. What we do know is that if and when, and this may happen just momentarily, this moves out of committee, it could be on the floor for floor action and a final vote in the House very, very quickly. There is no time to delay. Keep the pressure on. And I would tell you, one email is just not enough anymore, guys. Make sure you're emailing your congressman every day. Email him every day. Call them every day and make sure they hear from you nonstop around the clock. The phone number right now for the switchboard is 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121. Call them and make your voice heard. No, don't relent. Don't give up. I'm sorry. I'm managing like 3 screens at one time. We got people live in this hearing right now we're talking with. We've got a whole team of people involved in this today, guys. I'm reading some of my messages here. Take action right away. Stop HR7910.com. Let's go back and see what Representative Tiffany has to say.
Tell the American people what you really want to do, Mr. Chairman, and that is repeal the Second Amendment. And I would just close by this. Uzziah Garcia has been mentioned a couple times during this hearing. God bless that young man, and may he rest in peace, along with all the others that perished in Uvalde. But I would also cite Uzziah Garcia's uncle, who said, do not politicize this. Do not politicize this before all the facts are known about what went on at that Uvalde school. With that, if I have any colleagues that would like time yielded to them, I'd be happy to do it.
I'd like you to yield to me if you wouldn't mind.
Mr. Chairman,
No.
I yield back to you.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from New York, Mr. Jones, is recognized for 5 minutes.
I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the chairman of the full committee for convening this markup during recess that we can advance the Protecting Our Kids Act. This is life-saving legislation, and it cannot wait. I'm proud to co-sponsor this bill, and I'm proud to support it today in committee. As the youngest member of this committee, I need to address my Republican colleagues on behalf of the generations of young people whom Republicans have condemned to grow up in fear that they will be gunned down at school. When I was just 11 years old, something that then seemed unthinkable happened. 2 students killed a teacher and 12 of their classmates at Columbine High School. I was afraid. All of us were. But still, I had hope that by the time I was in high school, nothing like the shooting at Columbine would ever happen again. I had faith that adults would step up. I never imagined that mass shootings, let alone school shootings, would become our new normal. Yet that is exactly what has happened.
All right, I'm seeing the comments. Nick Tyson, you win. You say mute him. Mute him. Well, we'll mute him. Guys, this is the same talking points they use time and time and time again. They do not want to, as Terry is saying right now, they do not want to train and arm teachers. They don't want to repeal deadly gun-free zones. They don't want to give power to the people to defend themselves. They want all of us helpless, disarmed, and unable to fight back. They want an all-powerful government. They want an all-powerful state. And don't worry. They'll protect you. Don't worry about it. You got a problem, just call the government. They'll come and protect you. We saw how that worked in Uvalde. We saw how that worked in Parkland. We saw how the FBI, how many times, how many shootings has the FBI been tipped off in advance by family or friends of the killer in advance and done nothing? This government is absolutely incompetent. And folks, to be honest, I don't care if it's Republican president, Democratic president, the system, the machine, this bureaucracy is a joke. And they'll never be able to protect you. They only protect their own, and they only protect their power. So, guys, we have got to hammer on these people right now. All of this is lies. It's all just BS. There's no sympathy here for dead American children or adults. They don't care about stopping violence. They care about disarming you. That's it. That's their only goal. And they're hardly even hiding it anymore at all. Guys, this is a hot mess. You've got to take action on this, and you got to do it right away. Guys, again, the action link we have here is stophr7910.com. stophr7910.com. Guys, take action today. Fire off that email and make this happen immediately. Go back here to some more of this thrilling audio. Give me one more moment here.
Parkland, and time after time, you have chosen to put your right to kill over our right to live. But your selfishness and your indifference have not killed our hope. You have transformed it. Before, we believed that you might do what the people overwhelmingly support and help advance common sense gun violence legislation. Now we know that it is up to us to save ourselves from you. We did not choose this fight. We had our own dreams for our lives, the same as you did when you were kids, but we can't let you get away with this anymore.
Oh, shut up.
Enough is enough. Enough of you telling us that school shooting.
Just to be clear, Mr. Jones here is from New York State. Mr. Jones comes from a state where they already have a ban on high-capacity magazines. That did not just not stop the shooter in Buffalo. That literally he sought that area out to go to a spot where he knew he'd have almost nobody who was carrying concealed. And if they were capped at 10 rounds of ammo. They know it. This is intentional. And these bastards are letting this happen, knowing this agenda will only lead to more Americans being killed. Don't forget, they let our country burn in 2020. These Democrats let our country burn in 2020. They sat back, they attacked the cops, they attacked the gun owners, they attacked anybody who called for law and order, they attacked Republican governors, and they had their bands of thugs robbing, raping, and looting and burning their way across our country. These people are anarchist pieces of trash, and they would love nothing more than to see our entire country and all of our freedoms burn. And that is the only agenda with bills like this. Someone's commenting again saying, dude, you got to calm down. Man, I'm sorry. If you want calm, go join the NRA, man. This is not your kind of organization. The American Firearms Association is done playing games like this. Hold on here. We got Jim Jordan. Let's see what we got here.
That's what they want to do. Their real beef is with the Second Amendment. Their real beef is with the Second Amendment. Think about what this bill does. Mr. Massey just outlined the 6 bills thrown into one. What this bill does, it tells law-abiding citizens when you can get a gun, what kind of gun you can get, what accessories you can get for your gun, and where and how you have to store it in your own darn home. That's what this bill does. This is an assault. This is the start. This is the start. We know it's the start because Miss Jackson Lee, the first person to speak on their side, said this: we're not finished. This is just the beginning. Their goal, plain and simple, is to get rid of the Second Amendment. Joe Biden said it the other day. Said he wants to ban 9mm handguns. Michael Moore said it last week. Time to repeal the Second Amendment, he said. We know where the Democrats want to go, and they don't care about the Constitution. Mr. Bishop pointed that out just a few minutes ago. They know the age limit in this bill is unconstitutional. We just had a decision last month from the most liberal circuit in the country that it's unconstitutional. They know the storage provisions are unconstitutional. The Heller decision said so. They don't care. Forget the Constitution. They want to change the country in so many dramatic ways. The gentleman from New York just talked about getting rid of the filibuster, packing the court. We know they want to pack the court because chairman of this committee introduced a bill 14 months ago to pack the court.
Yes.
And the worst of it is, this bill would not address the tragedies we have seen unfold around the country in the last couple weeks. Would not stop the terrible events that we saw. Wouldn't harden schools. In fact, the spokesperson for the president just said last week, hardening schools is not something President Biden wants to happen. Not something he believes in. I find that astonishing, but that's what she said. This bill would not stop the terrible events. It wouldn't harden schools, but it will sure take away the rights of the American people who follow the law. That's what this is all about. But it's just so wrong. But it is part of the pattern we have seen. And again, as Mr. Bishop pointed out a few minutes ago, this is the Judiciary Committee. You would think there would be the proper respect for the Constitution and for decisions reached by our circuit courts. Nope. We are so focused on taking away people's liberty It's frightening to me when you put it all in context and you think about what the Democrats are trying to do to First Amendment liberties, now to Second Amendment liberties. This is what frightens the American people, and that's why we should vote this bill down, and we should come together as a bipartisan in a bipartisan way to figure out what we can do to help make schools safe, make sure that people are properly trained there, make sure the facility is the way it needs to be. We're all for that. But we're not for taking away this. We're not for taking away Second Amendment liberties, not for ending the Second Amendment like they want to do. Mr. Chairman, I would yield to the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Bishop.
I thank the ranking member. Quote, "We must dismantle white supremacy in all aspects of our society, and that means moving funding away from police departments and toward programs that improve public safety by helping to address the roots of systemic inequality." The gentleman from New York, the gentleman who just told us who he is, and I believe him. Except what the gentleman from New York described is annihilating the Second Amendment without repealing it in the manner contemplated by the Constitution of the United States.
The gentleman yield.
Understand what we are up against, because he just
Would the
told
gentleman
us.
yield?
He just told us,
Would the gentleman from
and I
Ohio
believe
yield?
him. I yield back to the gentleman from Ohio.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back. Thank you.
I wasn't aware that Michael Moore was a Democratic member of the House. What purpose does the gentlelady from Washington seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady's recognized.
Mr. Chairman, we originally called this markup to make a vow to the families of the 21
This is part of the squad, folks, the AOC squad. Here we go.
in the 27th school shooting this year. A vow to the families of the 10 people killed in a supermarket by an 18-year-old gunman in Buffalo, New York, just 2 weeks before Uvalde, Texas. A vow to the families of so many mass shootings who have channeled their anger and their grief into pushing for action from Congress to take life-saving measures by passing legislation for common sense, necessary, life-saving gun reform through the House of Representatives, and demanding that the Senate act to stop the insanity of mass shootings that plagues our country. And yet, before we could even have this hearing today, before the funerals have been held for those who died in Uvalde, just last night, America experienced another mass shooting at the St. Francis Medical Building in Tulsa, Oklahoma. At least 4 people died.
This is part of the AOC squad. Her, Cori Bush, AOC. These are the people who are literally fomenting violence all across our country for the last year and a half of Trump's administration, literally funding the bail money for people who were burning Minneapolis to the ground. We all remember that. 2 years ago, last week, the entire city was under siege. Much of the city was burned, over $1 billion with a B dollars in damages. And these are the kind of people who sat there and said, go burn it, destroy it, make your voice heard. And now they're going to sit there and say, oh my gosh, violence. They love violence when it comes to advancing their agenda. But if we want to have the right to defend ourselves against violent people, then it's our fault. Then we're the ones who should be disarmed. We're the ones who need to surrender our freedoms. She is no more, no less of a tyrant than anybody we've seen in the last century across all of Europe, across all of Asia. Read a history book. Their goal is to disarm all of us, to subjugate us with the same kind of tyranny that we have seen destroy civilizations across the globe for a long, long time. These are evil, evil people, folks. This bill number is 7910, and we have a campaign, an advocacy campaign, made it very easy for you guys to talk to your congressman. I'm posting it right there at stophr7910.com, stophr7910.com. Get those out. Talk to your congressman. Tell them you damn sure better oppose this. If they're a Republican, it's time to show some spine. And your email effectively says that. If they're a Democrat, your email tells them you'd better vote no on this. If you don't, your own seat, depends upon where they represent, and more importantly, your party's control of Congress, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose it. So, folks, fire off those emails right away. Stop HR7910.com. And again, if you haven't gone there today, go to stopredflags.com, stopredflags.com. These are the threats. And I'm going to tell you again, guys, you have got to join this organization and get involved as a member today. I'm just going to shamelessly say it. Join AFA.org. We're in the fight of our lives right now. We've got Patrick Parsons live in this committee hearing right now. We're working with pro-gun members of Congress, with their staff, doing all we can to give you guys all the information you need to take action. And we need you guys to join our team, join this fight today, join AFA.org. That is the most up-to-date membership t-shirt that comes out. That is our most up-to-date membership decal that comes out. Get involved today. Join AFA.org. Nobody else is in D.C. right now pushing back on this. You're not seeing the NRA say a damn thing, right? Because they are okay with red flag gun seizures. They are okay with this stuff, and they don't care about what happens. Nick Tyson asked a question. Here's a question. If the bill is unconstitutional, doesn't that mean that they will essentially become null and void? Nick, I mean, there's two answers to your question. On the one hand, sure, it should be null and void right away if it's unconstitutional. But the reality is that if they pass this stuff, they will use the ATF and local and state officials to enforce it. And you're going to wind up, we're all of us going to wind up facing criminal charges if this stuff advances. The courts may, down the road, strike this stuff down. You've heard about that today from Jim Jordan and all the different bills, laws that have been struck down by the courts in various circuits. But we don't know. And to simply sit back there and say, well, it's unconstitutional, that doesn't change the fact that we're going to pay the price if and when they come after you, come after me, come after us for violating this pathetic law or bill currently, HR 7910. Let's see who else we've got here.
Who strike the last word?
Who is recognized?
In the filibuster, expand the court, take away your constitutional rights under the Second Amendment. And we just heard that that's exactly what the Democrats want to do here today and in the House in this coming week. On Monday, Biden stated a 9mm bullet blows the lung out of the body. And I quote, so the idea of these high caliber weapons is of there's simply no rational basis for it in terms of thinking about self-protection. So you can't protect yourself with a 9mm. I guess according to Biden, only a 22 round ammunition would be sufficient. Then the White House walked back that statement and said he supports a ban on the sale of assault weapons, which there's no such thing, and high capacity magazines. High capacity magazines. I'm going to come back to that in a second. Yesterday, Speaker Pelosi, speaking at an anti-gun rally in San Francisco, stated, we will have a hearing markup on an assault weapon ban. Their plans and their intentions are clear. They want to take away law-abiding citizens' ability to purchase the firearm of their choice, and don't let them fool you that they are not attempting to take away your ability to purchase handguns. They're using the magazine ban to do it. Last year in 2020 and 2021, the Glock 19 was the highest sold handgun in the United States. It comes with a 15-round magazine. That gun would be banned. Right here in front of me, I have a Sig Sauer P226.
Yeah.
With a 21-round magazine. This gun would be banned. Here's a 12-round magazine. This magazine would be banned under this current bill. It doesn't fit because this gun was made for a 20-round, 21-round magazine. This gun would be banned under this bill. Here's a Sig Sauer 320.
Ooh.
It takes a 20-round magazine. Here's a 12-round magazine that would be banned. It doesn't fit because it would be banned. This gun would be banned under this bill. Here's a gun I carry every single day to protect myself, my family, my wife, my home. This is a XL Sig Sauer P365. Comes with a 15-round magazine. Here's a 7-round magazine, which would be less than what would be lawful under this bill if this bill were to become law. It doesn't fit. So this gun would be banned.
I hope the gun is not loaded.
I'm at my house. I can do whatever I want with it.
Here's a point of order.
Is exactly what the Democrats want to do. Now let's just take the policy objectives that they're trying to accomplish and look at the municipalities that have actually passed it. Maryland, Washington, D.C., Cook County, Illinois, all have some of the strictest gun country laws in the country, including limiting magazines to only 10 rounds. By comparison, in Florida, there are significantly less restrictions and no limits on magazine size in the state of Florida.
Would the gentleman
So
yield
are
for
these
question?
laws effective?
Would the
Let's look
gentleman
at the
yield for
homicide
question?
rates in major cities and anti-gun jurisdictions that have magazine bans.
Would the gentleman
and
yield
compare
for
them to the
question?
state of Florida, where we have freedom and the ability to carry whatever firearm we want.
Would the
Jacksonville,
gentleman
Florida,
yield for
the
question?
largest city by area in the state, in my state.
Would the gentleman yield for question? It's a no.
No, I'm trying to get my point across in the 2
The
minutes
answer
that
is
I
no.
have left.
Gentleman won't yield.
The murder rate was more, now let me start back over, and I hope you give me my 10 or 15 seconds back that you just took. Jacksonville, Florida, the largest city by area in my state, the murder rate was more than half of DC or Chicago in 2021, and you are 4 times lower, and it was 4 times lower than in Baltimore, Maryland. All jurisdictions that have a magazine ban, you're safer in the state of Florida where we don't have it. If you live in Tampa, Florida, near my district, or in Orange County, where Orlando is located, in 2021, you were roughly 3 times less likely to be murdered here in Florida, in Orange County, or in Tampa than in Chicago or DC, where they both have magazine bans. And you are a whopping 5 times less likely to be murdered than in Baltimore, Maryland, than in Tampa, Florida, or Orange County. Additionally, the state of West Virginia is instructive on this point. West Virginia has some of the most gun-friendly laws in the country, including permitless carry, no magazine restrictions. For purposes of comparing apples to apples, West Virginia also faces some struggles and has poverty levels comparable to nearby Baltimore and Washington, D.C. Yet someone is 9 times less likely to be murdered in West Virginia than in Baltimore, and approximately 5 times less than in D.C., according to the most recent numbers in those jurisdictions. These anti-gun cities, particularly ones with magazine bans, have some of the highest crime rates in the country, and they are growing worse. These laws do nothing to stop crime, and no one here thinks they will actually stop mass shootings. This is a push to take away your right to carry whatever firearm you please to defend yourself. So I hope our colleagues in the Senate are paying attention. A magazine ban will not allow you to carry these type of handguns because they don't have the capacity to take such a small magazine. I yield back.
Gentleman yield back for purposes, the gentleman from Florida.
Fire.
I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman,
We can't go on to this loser now after hearing that. I mean, this is, you guys are asking, who was that Representative Greg Stube from Florida? He is, I believe, from the 17th Congressional, probably the hottest speaker we've seen today. That guy was breathing fire, and that is what we need to see. You saw all that he said. All these guns that he carries for self-defense would effectively become paperweights because you can't put a smaller capacity mag in these firearms. Well said. He absolutely killed it. This is the kind of energy, this is the kind of aggression that we need from congressional Republicans because, folks, this is a huge fight. We've got Ted Deutsch. I'm going to leave it at that for now, who is speaking right now, one of the leading sponsors of a variety of the gun control bills that are being wrapped into H.R. 7910. Forget which one exactly is his, but there's 8 or 9 bills in here. He has one of them. Look at this guy, just a complete ghoul. They absolutely want to leave us all helpless, hopeless, disarmed. That's what they want. So great to see Greg Stube just killing it today in committee, folks. They need your help. They need to hear from you guys immediately. Fire off that email. Stop. Where's my link for this? Stop HR. Where's that freaking link? Stop HR7910.com. Go there. Hit the link. Send in your email. Stand with guys like Greg Stube, Tom Massey, Jim Jordan. Make your voice heard. Stand up and tell these Democrats to go to hell and not to move this bill. It's stophr7910.com. Yeah, James says we should send Greg a thank you. Dude, do it. Give him a call. In fact, I'll get you his number right now. I'm on his website. I will find you his number, his DC office number. I want to be clear. I want to slow down. This is not the switchboard. This is Greg Stube's office. Call him and thank his staff for his incredible speech just now. 202-225-5792. That's 202 225-5792. Good idea there, James. Appreciate that. Fire this off, guys, and make your voice heard. There are some people who are still fighting. There are many other Republicans who are conceding and who are part of the problem we have in Washington, D.C. They're aided, of course, by the National Rifle Association, who has said nothing about the red flag push right now in D.C., has said almost nothing about anything happening right now in D.C. We're working around the clock to light up these members of Congress with calls, emails, petitions, everything we've got from our members. And guys, you need to make your voice heard right away and join this fight, because the NRA is not going to fight for you. They have long ago abandoned the field. They have long ago surrendered the fight when it comes to the red flag gun seizure push. We need your help, guys. Join AFA.org. Get involved today. Join AFA.org. This sanctimonious bastard, I believe, is the guy who was pushing one of the 3 different safe storage laws. Safe storage laws. Look at that condescending ass's face. He does not care if you are gunned down in your own home trying to fumble with your gun safe at 2 o'clock in the morning, listening to a team of home invaders bang through your front door. If you get shot and killed, if your wife gets raped, if your kids are murdered because you can't access your firearm, he doesn't care. They don't care. They are very happy to have you suffer that price, because all they care about is disarming this great country and making sure that we don't have the option to fight back against criminals and tyrants. And folks, that is what this is all about: stopping criminals and stopping tyrants. People are asking, what is the number again for Greg Stube? I have it right here. It's 202-225-5792. I'll read it off again one more time for those who are wanting to get that written down. 202-225-5792 for Greg Stube. He needs to hear from you guys immediately, right away. Charlie says, Val Deming's coming up next. You might as well keep talking. Thank you very much for that, Charlie. I appreciate that. There's a lot going on here, folks. Join in that fight. Join AFA.org. We are trying to roll as hard and as fast as we can in D.C. We're going to have a live update moment. Well, not whenever this committee ends, from Patrick Parsons, our vice president. He is there. You heard from him earlier today. He's going to give a live update once this is done. And folks, there's just a lot going on. Stop HR7910.com and stopredflags.com. These are the 2 main links. Let's see what's going on here.
Strike the last word.
And ladies recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. My colleague from North Carolina had the audacity to talk about bullies. Well, I think bullies.
Her face is as fake as her green screen. And we're not going to humor this as well. Guys, there's a lot going on here. Again, Nancy Pelosi announced just last night that she intends to push next week, besides the vote on red flags, which is HR 2377, she's going to push a vote on banning our AR-15s. That is exactly what we've always warned you guys about. That is the agenda here. It's a total ban on AR-15s and over 200 separate semi-automatic firearms. That is their agenda. That is their goal. And they're not even hiding it. You got Beto O'Rourke, this idiot. I mean, the guy, he's about as thick as my finger, right? This guy, this little spindly little bastard, he's in the press conference in Uvalde trying to browbeat the mayor and the governor who had given an update on the shooting. You got Beto O'Rourke 2 days ago saying they're going to go, this is to your question, Raj, Pat. He says, will there be a grandfather clause or confiscation? Beto said just 2 days ago, no. We're going to grab all the ones you currently own as well. They want to grab every gun you currently own that fits their definition of what is an assault weapons ban. So, no, that's, and to be totally honest, Raj, I think it's Raj. I could be getting your name wrong, and I apologize if I am. Honestly, we don't want a grandfather clause, because the last thing we need right now is gun owners to sit back and say, well, I've already got my gun safe full of firearms. I don't need to worry about this. We don't need that kind of mentality. We are fighting for our freaking country, not for our personal firearms. Everybody here has an AR-15, probably got 10 AR-15s. I got AR-15s all over the place. We're not fighting for our AR-15s. We're fighting for our country. We're fighting for our great-great-grandchildren's right to defend themselves from criminals and tyrants. And what we do in these next 4 or 5 months before the midterms will go a long ways towards deciding whether or not our grandkids will have the kinds of freedom that we have right now in this country. Our forefathers fought and died to give us these freedoms. Our grandfathers politically fought to protect these freedoms. We have, look, it's just 2022. We have a debt of honor to those who went before. And we have a debt of honor to those who are coming after us, to hold the line for freedom, to stop these tyrannical bastards and shut this down so that freedom does not perish in this country, because people, that is what is on the line. If they take away our guns, if they take away our right to keep and bear arms, that's it. Tyranny and evil in darkness. That is what comes next, and that is it. It has happened every time in human history. When a people are disarmed, that is what comes next. If you guys agree with me, sound off in the comment section. Get involved in this fight. Join AFA.org and get involved today. This is all coming fast. This is all coming fast. Dale says it was not long ago that Graham was on TV bragging about his AR-15. Now he's stabbing us in the back. Exactly. Dale, you're exactly right. Lindsay would say, oh, no, I don't want to ban your AR-15s. I can't even do the guy's voice. I can't. But he's all on board. He's all on board with passing a national red flag gun seizure law. He's absolutely on board when it comes to that. So, folks, a lot coming right now. AFA is working overtime to flood the zone with all the information you guys need to make your voices heard. It's a big deal, folks. Rock and roll on this. I'm getting a bunch of new AFA members on here. I'm going to read off, excuse me, some of the names of people who have joined up today. A huge shout out to Joshua in Box Elder, South Dakota. Joshua, I grew up not too far from Sioux Falls in Northwest Iowa. I have been to Box Elder. A huge donation, over $1,100, a lifetime membership, and then some. Cannot thank you enough for that, Joshua. Thank you very much. We've got Greg in Monticello, Georgia, as a new member, $50 membership to the American Firearms Association. Thank you so much. We've got Justin Hall from Littleton, Colorado, either Littleton or Little Town. I'm not sure which one it is. Colorado, thank you very much for joining the fight. We've got German from Fairview, Tennessee, just joined up as a member of the American Firearms Association. Brad in Rockford, Illinois, the same state as Adam Kinzinger. We won't hold that against you, man. Not at all. Thank you for your membership in the American Firearms Association. Tom in Idaho, very generous membership right now to the American Firearms Association. Let me see here. We've got Thomas from Romulus, Michigan, just joined up, American Firearms Association. Chad from Flint, Michigan in the house, American Firearms Association. Folks, we're going to keep reading off these names. We're going to keep, if you want to hear your name read, folks, we will do that today as best we can. Join this fight. We need your involvement in this right now. Jennifer says, fight, fight, fight. Thank you very much for that. James says, I'm going to join today, dropping the NRA, and you guys are going to get my Iowa money. James is also a member of Iowa Gun Owners. James, appreciate that. I'm sure you know I run Iowa Gun Owners. Happy to be involved in the fight here with AFA, but man, got my start doing Iowa gun politics, and we have beat people's asses in Des Moines for years and years and years, and we have passed some of the best gun bills in the world in Iowa over the last couple of years as a result. Thank you for being involved in that fight. That is the same tactics. That is the same aggression and passion that we bring now to the fight at the federal level. Most of you have been involved with our fight for gun rights in Iowa, in Missouri, in Ohio, in Minnesota, in Georgia, in Wyoming, in Pennsylvania. We're all over the country fighting for your freedoms. But now This threat today is in D.C. That's why we founded a long time ago the American Firearms Association, to have this vehicle ready to go when these fights come. We knew they were coming. We're here. The fights are here. We're all here now. So if you're involved with our state operations, guys, get involved in the fight for gun rights at the federal level. That's AFA. Join AFA.org. This is the group on the ground in D.C. fighting for you guys, and we're not going to give up. I believe we have Ken Buck here from Colorado. Ken is certainly one of the good guys. Let's give some time here to Ken Buck.
During that time, it did not reduce violent gun crime in America. These bills that have been presented, the Safe Storage Act, Ethan's Law, Safe Guns, Safe Kids Act, closing the bump stock, Keep Americans Safe Act, would not have prevented what happened in the last 3 shootings and many other shootings. We have a serious problem involving family, involving drugs, involving mental health in this country. We have gone in the wrong direction in the last 40 or 50 years. We have become a less safe society generally. Blaming the gun for what's happening in America is small-minded. It is unfortunate that we can't come together as a group of well thought through legislators that want to deal with this problem, pointing the fingers at each other and saying, well, you're only doing this because you're trying to gain political points on the heels of a dangerous shooting. And then for you to tell us that, well, we're controlled by the NRA. I voted against the NRA. I'll vote against the NRA when I think they're wrong. I'm representing my constituents. In rural Colorado, an AR-15 is a gun of choice for killing raccoons before they get to our chickens. It is a gun of choice for killing a fox. It is a gun that you control predators on your ranch, on your farm.
And criminals and tyrants. Get with it.
That somehow we're going to deny access to, I think there are 20 million AR-15s in circulation in this country. It makes absolutely no sense, and it's unfortunate. I think that there are other answers. We've certainly in Colorado, we have discussed the possibility of incentivizing veterans who come back from the military or discharged from the military to go into education and teach and be able to carry guns in a school as a teacher, as an administrator, as a coach, trying to help to strengthen our system. I think we've got to get beyond the finger pointing at this point. I think we've got to get to the point where we're holding hearings. And I hope when Republicans take the majority in November, that in January, we will start to hold hearings and come up with answers that are meaningful, not answers where we tell the American public we've solved the problem. We're going to make sure that there's no guns in schools, so law-abiding citizens don't have guns in schools, but criminals do. We want to make sure that we get to the bottom line of a very complex and very serious problem that this country faces. And I hope we do in the future. It's obvious to me that right now that's not what's intended, and it's sad. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. For what purposes? The gentleman from California seek recognition.
Right, the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
19 kids are dead. 19 children are dead. And so to my Republican colleagues, I ask, who are you here for? Are you here for our kids?
Oh, we got to hit this right out of the park right early, guys. This is Eric Swalwell. If you don't know who Eric Swalwell is, this is the guy. He says, who are you here for? He says, who are you here for? Well, here's what we know about Eric Swalwell. The guy had sex with a Chinese spy. Look it up. The guy had an affair with a Chinese spy. And after she was caught, after the whole thing came out, she fled back to communist China to hide from the American authorities because she is a commie spy. And Eric Swalwell slept with her as a member, if memory serves correctly, as a member of the House Select Committee on Intelligence. This should be an absolutely impeachable offense. I wouldn't be surprised there's a time in our country where it'd be a treason level offense. But this arrogant guy sits there and says, who are you here for? When he's sitting here slipping pillow talk secrets to a commie spy, and he's still elected from the People's Republic of California. Look at that arrogant, smug face. These are the people. I mean, this is the guy a year and a half ago, who was telling the American people, what does it matter if you have guns? You can't stop us. We have nukes. We have nukes. This is the kind of tyrants we're talking about. They would happily destroy our entire armed population if that's what it took to give them a subjugated, disarmed, controllable population, because that is what they want. They want us to be disarmed. They want us to be totally helpless against their tyranny. That is the look of a tyrant. That is the look of an arrogant bastard who would love to take away all of your freedoms. And folks, he is not alone. He is far from alone. Help us push back on this, guys. StopHR7910.com. StopHR7910.com. I'm reading some of the comments here. The spy lover, Swalwell belongs in prison, says John. Absolutely. Complete trash. Can you imagine if Matt Gaetz or Jim Jordan had an affair today with a spy from communist China? Can you imagine what would happen? They would hang them from the yard arm on a battleship in Norfolk, Virginia. It'd be done. But this guy can sit here and not only do it, he can get away with it, and then sit there and continue to try and take away all of our freedoms, working for, or at least being a part of, the efforts of the communist China, communist Chinese, to attack our freedoms. The guy is a complete piece of trash. I'd say so much more than just trash. I got my kids, I think, are watching today. At least my oldest kids are, so I got to be a little bit careful of what I say. But guys, this is a major, major fight. Dan says, what a treasonous ass. Yeah, well said, Dan. Well said. Folks, get involved in this fight today. It's joinafa.org, joinafa.org. Matthew says, where is the actual live coverage? Matthew, that is the screen you're seeing right now. That is the screen you're seeing right here. That's Eric Swalwell talking about HR 7910. This is the live feed that we're giving you guys in real time. We're giving you live analysis as these statist pigs talk, and we'll bounce back and forth here throughout the broadcast today. But get involved in this fight. So many people are involved in this fight today. So many new members. I'm going to give you guys some of the names. If you want to hear your name right off today, guys, let us know where. I mean, just keep your memberships coming. Dennis just joined up in Phoenix City, Alabama. Thank you very much, Dennis, for that. Tim is a new member from Jefferson, Georgia. We appreciate that very much. David from Brewerton, New York, in the house as a new member. We appreciate that very much, David. We've got Stephen in Bridgeton, Missouri, in the house. Good to see you on here. James is in from that name I can't pronounce, in Georgia. Thank you to being on board here, man. Really appreciate you guys being involved in this fight. Man, there's a lot going on right now, guys. Join up today. JoinAFA.org. Man, so many comments. I can't even read them all fast enough here, guys. I'm going to join at lunchtime. Heath Gray, my old friend. Dickens, Iowa. Good to see you, my man. Let's see what Nadler has.
Back the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, this will be good.
I don't think that it's very effective for the children to have people on the other side of the aisle come in, accuse Republicans of being complicit in murder, and that we put our right to kill over others' right to live, to infer by rhetorical supposed questions, who are you here for? We must be here for the gunman, is an outrage. How dare you? You think we don't have hearts? It's just that when we look at the things that you're doing and you're trying to do to America, we've seen the carnage. I mean, for heaven's sake, let's take example. Democrats control the major cities that have the worst murder rates. That's right. Your ideas have been shown to get people killed. Are you here for the murders the murderers in Chicago, in Philadelphia, in these other major cities, because you're wanting to do nationally what is being done by Democrats in those big cities. We care about people. We care about their lives. And lives have been so trivialized. We care deeply. How dare you? How dare you? You arrogant people attributing murder to those of us that want to do things to stop it, because we've seen what your ideas do. They create more murder. Okay, let's look. Rochester, New York. These are cities that set the all-time high homicide rates in 2021. This is what you're shooting for, apparently, figuratively speaking. Rochester, New York, they had a record homicide rate of 80. Not that big of a city. Philadelphia, 524 last year. And by the way, all of these are Democrat mayors. Louisville, Kentucky hit a high homicide rate. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Indianapolis, St. Paul, Portland, Albuquerque, Tucson, Columbus, Jackson, Mississippi, Atlanta, New Haven. Those are all Democrat ideas. They control. They've done so many of the things that Democrats in this committee want to do. We're not alleging you don't care. We're just telling you that your ideas have gotten people killed, not saved lives, for heaven's sake. And then you want to be arrogant and accuse us of murder and of not caring? We care. And if you could just possibly get off any kind of arrogant stepladder that allows you to look down on us and look back historically. Thomas Jefferson was not at the Constitutional Convention, but he said in a letter, if I could change one thing, it would be to require bills to be on file for a year before they're voted on, because he understood the mistakes that are made when you rush and make big decisions out of emotion. That's what we're trying to prevent, so that we can save lives and keep people from being killed. For heaven's sake, I think back historically, we had a president in Franklin Roosevelt that on D-Day led the country in a 6 to 8 minute prayer for our troops. And now we had a president come on after Uvalde and he used God's name in vain. Most of us would consider it. It was used as an interjection, not as a source from whom to beg for wisdom, like this country did for most of our history. Since the 60s, we really started having these mass shootings. Perhaps there was something in the 60s, maybe some Supreme Court decisions that gave rise to people being taught in school, it's whatever you think feels good. Well, it's time to get common sense back and to look historically about where people are being murdered in record rates, and don't repeat that like the Democrats are trying to do. Let's do common sense things that will save lives. I'm out of time, Fred. You're back.
Gentleman yields back for purposes. Ms. Scanlon will seek recognition.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman lady is recognized.
I do want to respond first to Mr. Gomer, and I'm sorry that he and many of his colleagues didn't think it was important enough to be here today. But I did want to respond to his allegation that Philadelphia's homicide rate is. I will not. I will not.
Folks, we'll yield on behalf of Mr. Gomer. We were talking to his staff earlier today. Mr. Gomer's flight was delayed out of Texas, and he was unable to get back to D.C. for today's hearing. That's why he is not there today. Everybody in the committee knows that. They don't give a damn. They're just trying to make him look like an idiot for not being there today. That's why he is not there in person. So many people joining the American Firearms Association today. Thank you for joining this fight. There is a lot going on, folks. Get involved today. We're going to do roll call again on a whole bunch of new members who are pouring in right now. We got James in Iowa as a brand new member. Thank you very much. James in Carlisle. I know Carlisle very well, James. We got Sue in Blowing Rock, North Carolina in the house as a new member of AFA. Andrew from Felicity, Ohio, joined up as a member today. Thank you very much, Andrew. We got Mary in Skykesville, Maryland. Thank you for being on board. Jeff in Pennsylvania just joined up in the last few minutes. We got James from Liverpool, Ohio in the house. Pretty sure I know your name, James. I've met you, I believe, once in the past at a rally. We got Sabo from Xenia, Ohio. I know Xenia pretty well too, man. Good town, good place to be from. Brian, Buford, Georgia in the house. Thank you very much for that, Brian. We got David in Richmond Hills, Georgia. Georgia coming in strong. Of course, everyone knows that in Georgia, AFA's state affiliate, Georgia gun owners, just passed constitutional carry, Senate Bill 319. Governor signed it last month. No, 2 months ago now. And now Georgia is the 25th constitutional carry state in the country. Guys, the same pressure we bring to bear at the state capitol is now being brought to bear in Washington, D.C. Our whole team is mobilized today on this. Get involved at joinafa.org. Joinafa.org. That was Louis Gohmert talking a minute ago. This is not Louis Gohmert. Let's just be clear on that. This is Representative, I call her Scandalin, but she is from Pennsylvania, and she's a hardcore gun-grabbing nut job who wants to disarm all of you. And that's what we're seeing here is that all these people, they're all in this strictly to attack your gun rights, to attack our freedoms. It's not about saving lives, not about dead kids in Uvalde, Texas. It's about taking away your gun rights, disarming the American people. They want to make us like every other country on earth, disarmed and helpless. Sure, you can have your side-by-side shotgun, but that's it, and that's all, until they come after those too, like they did in Australia, like they did in Canada, England and everywhere else, guys. This is the fight of our time. Our grandkids are counting on us to hold the line. We're doing that here at AFA. Fire off your emails. StopHR7910.com. StopHR7910.com. Help us fight back on this. Help us fight back on red flags. StopRedFlags.com. That vote comes up next week. Not sure what day. Could be between Tuesday or Thursday, somewhere in that window. They're going to begin voting at 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, and they're going to be adjourned for the week somewhere around 3 p.m. on Thursday. So the Tuesday evening, Thursday afternoon, that is the window for next week. Make your voice heard, guys. We'll be there. Part of our team will be there live in D.C. again next week, as part of our team is there right now today. Guys, we're going to keep you informed. I am going to sign off here for a little while. Thank you for the thousands of gun owners who've been all watching our stream here for the last couple of hours. Take a moment and share this video on social media. Let other people know what is going on right now live in Washington, D.C. We're going to be back later on today, the live update with Patrick Parsons, who is there right now in this room with these statist pigs. We're going to update with him in just a little bit. Get involved, guys. Fire off your emails. Go to joinafa.org. And, folks, stay dangerous for your families, for your freedoms, and for your country. We'll keep you informed. Take care.